tribes for 10 years, the difference would be at most 0.1, if you really stretch it, 0.2 Celsius degrees. Now that is not a problem on any view. So we certainly do not face the kind of immediate urgency. These endless statements by Al Gore and the Prince of Wales saying, oh, this is why we've only got a few months or the planet's doomed. No, it's not. We've got plenty of time. And one should not rush into taking panic measures without having taken the precaution to apply the precautionary principle not only to that which you're taking precautions against, but also to the precautions themselves. And given the quite disproportionate cost of going about it the way that governments are trying to go about it, which is by trying to mitigate carbon emissions rather than simply adapting as and if necessary, it makes a lot of sense to stand back for a few years, perhaps for a decade, and just see whether the temperatures worldwide are going to continue on the trend which they've set over the last 15 years, which, as we've now smoked out from Dr. Phil Jones at the Climate Research Unit, there has been no statistically significant warming of the planet for the whole of the last decade and a half, 15 years. Indeed, for the last 8 years, there has been rapid and significant global cooling. So even if we did nothing for another 8 years, all that would probably happen is that the cooling of the last 8 years might reverse itself. That would leave us no worse off than we were in around the year 2002. So we have the time to take stock and get the science right. It is not satisfactory to set government policies on the basis of people in white coats coming along and saying, oh, well, we've got a scare here. Y2K, for instance, or bird flu, or SARS, or any number of these scares that they've whipped up, or salt is bad for you. No, it isn't. Let's just take that one as an example of the kind of nonsense that has happened in the past. If you take too much salt, all that happens is that it is excreted harmlessly through the kidneys. And only about one person in 100,000 would find it a bad idea to take lots of salt, and that is if they are so critical with their blood pressure that that extra 0.3 milligrams of mercury, whatever it is, would just push you up over the threshold of danger. But for the vast majority of the population, you can have as much salt as you like in your diet, it doesn't make any difference. But we have a huge industry, a governmental industry, telling us that salt in our diet is bad for us. Well, it isn't. Get used to it. And one of the things that one has to learn, and I saw this a lot in Number 10, there were always people turning up wanting to get money out of the government by a fascinating variety of pseudo-scientific boondoggles. And my job as the science advisor, and why was I the science advisor without having any science qualification? Because at least I was a mathematician and I knew what questions to ask. I would say, right, does this or does it not stack up? And if they couldn't explain it to me so that I understood that it did stack up, they didn't get the money. And that's how it should be. We are now in a financial crisis where Britain is about to end up with a deficit larger than that of Greece, for heaven's sake. And a deficit not larger just in absolute terms, but larger as a percentage of gross domestic product. This is a staggering financial failure on the part of our corrupt governing class. And if we allow them to indulge their fantasies and squander the 18 or 20 billion pounds a year that the Climate Change Act envisages, then that is going to be 18 or 20 billion pounds a year out of the pockets of people who are already facing poverty and unemployment as a result of the quite spectacular incompetence with which the economy has been run over the last 10 or 15 years.